The Nasty Critter by Richard M. Scotti. I never thought that 40 years after hearing the term nasty critter that I would be writing a story about it. But I guess it's one of those things that just stays with you and you never forget. The year was 1971. The only two things I cared about at 14 years old were girls and basketball, not necessarily in that order. I had just graduated from Southside Junior High School, and I had just pledged for a fraternity and been accepted. I had my first serious girlfriend. All of a sudden, bam, my father pulls the rug out from under me. He had sold our home in South Hempstead, and right after I finished 8th grade, he announces we are moving to New Suffolk, this tiny little town where we used to sometimes go in the summer when I was a little kid. What? Are you kidding me? I was stunned. We moved to a house on the hill overlooking Peconic Bay. I learned I would be going to a high school a few towns east of us, to Southold High School, whose basketball team, the Settlers, was named in reference to the fact that Southold was the first town settled in New York State in the year 1640. As the summer progressed, I started riding my bike around and quickly made friends with kids I met at the ball field and basketball court. We played basketball, rode our bikes, and tried to meet the summer girls who would come out to their summer homes. These kids had never seen behind the back, between the legs dribbling, or behind the back no-look passes. My boyhood idol was Pistol Pete Maravich, and I patterned my whole basketball game after him, right down to my haircut and floppy gray socks. I was different than the local kids. Some of them considered me a city kid or someone from up the island. I had the cool haircut, the flashy clothes, the red suede Pro-Ked sneakers, and a bounce to my step. The most important thing is that I came from a good family, and I was a nice kid. First day of school is bad enough. First day of school in a new school is horrifying. But first day of school in a new town is nervous breakdown time. Now the dreaded morning was upon me. The bus pulled up at the corner of my street, Old Harbor Road. I tentatively climbed the few steps of the school bus and paused to see where I was going to sit. There were a bunch of kids on the bus already. I took an aisle seat towards the first few rows by myself. I realized I knew no one at all. Within a few minutes, I noticed a crowd had formed in the back of the bus. They were in a circle, and I heard a strange voice singing a strange song and weird sounds coming from the center of the circle. This is the first time I ever laid eyes on the Nasty Critter. Even though I was the new kid, nervous, and did not know anyone, curiosity got the best of me. As I worked my way towards the back of the bus, I heard, "The critters are in the sky. The critters are on the ground. Yeah, those nasty critters are all around. Yeah, yeah, nasty critter. Yeah, yeah, nasty critter." There he was in the middle of the circle, the Nasty Critter. Instantly, I felt bad for him. He was a big kid, oddly dressed, heavy-set, with poor hygiene. He had dandruff on the neck of his shirt and a bit of crust on the edges of his mouth. He was an easy target for these bus kids. They were laughing at him, throwing things at him, and hitting him in the back of the head. My first thought when I saw him and heard his song was, what the hell kind of place did my parents move me to? My second thought was, this poor kid is being abused, and it has to stop. I felt bad for him. He was not even aware that they were making fun of him. I wanted to tell him, stop singing, man, because these kids were having a field day with him. I held my tongue and said nothing. Sure enough, he starts singing again, and the abuse starts again. I remember thinking, is this how these local yokels amuse themselves? And all the while, he has no clue that he was the joke. Needless to say, this was uncomfortable to watch. As his performance continued, the kids were getting even louder and more ridiculous. This went on for what seemed like forever. I felt like I was going to burst, and finally I couldn't take it anymore. I yelled out, "Leave him alone! What's the matter with you?" It was quiet for a few seconds. I think they were surprised by my outburst. Finally, a voice came from the circle. "What's the matter with him?" I don't know who said it, and they didn't really care. I said, "Why don't you shut the hell up and leave the kid alone? If you keep it up, you'll have to deal with me." I guess the fact that nobody knew me and I was different caught them off guard. Nobody said anything back to me. So now the bus kids knew not to mess with the Nasty Critter. Whether I realized it or not, I had taken the critter under my wing with my bold stance. They all saw I was not going to tolerate it. Now I had a whole new set of problems. The kids at school. Why did I put myself into this, and why did I open my big mouth? After all, I was the new kid being held under a microscope by all these local kids. I just couldn't help myself, and somebody had to help him. I was that somebody. Right off the bat, it starts again. I was in science class, and the critter was in my class. The teacher paired everyone up for a project. The teacher announced everyone's names and their partners' names. The critter was partnered up with a kid named Walter Clarick. I could sense Walter was going to start in with the critter. His demeanor had creep written all over it. I hear Walter say, "Hey, man, put your mouth on this tube." It was a black tube attached to a Bunsen burner. Sure enough, the critter obliged. Walter blew into his side, and black powder went all over the critter's face. I yelled at Walter, "Hey, man, how would you like it if somebody did that to you?" He said, "Nobody would do that to me because I can defend myself." I said, "Yeah? Good for you." "He can't defend himself." He said, "Who the hell are you? What do you think, you're a tough guy?" I replied with, "I don't think I'm a tough guy. I am a tough guy, and I'd be more than happy to show you." Once again, the new kid unknown factor thing worked in my favor. I kept surprising people, and it was not my nature to be this way. I was, at the same time, surprising myself. I always felt that when you're in the midst of a confrontation, if you act just a little crazier than the other person, they usually back off. Walter wisely backed off. As time went on, I would ride my bike to the critter's house to play basketball with him. Sometimes Donnie and Henry would come. Most times it was just me and the critter. He didn't say too much about anything. He would just smile, and I could tell he was just glad I was there, and he was not alone. When I rang the bell, his mother always had a friendly smile on her face, and I could tell it was a smile of appreciation. She would call his name, and he would come running through the house, excited that I was there to shoot baskets with him. This went on for a couple of years. He usually just shot the ball. The critter actually had a good eye for the basket. He was a lefty, and he loved to shoot from this one spot on the court, deep in the left corner. I don't know why. It was just his spot. Over time, I felt I had the critter protected. Even if he wasn't in some of my classes, word had spread that I was his protector, and for the most part, kids left him alone. He would sing his Nasty Critter theme song, and we would laugh, not at him, but with him. By my junior year, I was captain of the basketball team, and by my senior year, I was a preseason high school All-American. At this point, I felt confident enough in my position on the team to ask the coach to let Critter be a sort of mascot. The coach obliged because I was his star player, and I guess he wanted to appease me. The critter was allowed to attend all practices and games. Once in a blue moon, the coach would actually let him on the court to take some shots during practice. Midway through the season, I asked the coach if he could have a uniform. The coach said, "Why? He's never going to play." I said, "Coach, it would mean a lot to me, and would mean the world to the critter." Sure enough, the nasty critter got his uniform. Game after game, he would sit at the end of the bench with that big goofy smile of his. He was so proud. I could see it in his eyes. I was so happy for him. Finally, one day, the magic happened. It was the second to last game of the year. It was against our only opponent with a much smaller enrollment than our high school. We always looked forward to playing them and always beat up on them. Shelter Island High School. I'm sure we were that school for other opponents we faced, but for us, it was them. We felt a little guilty beating them the way we did when we played them, and it was no different this game. With about 2 minutes left in the game, we were up on them by 30 points, 75-45. All of our starters were on the bench, myself included. We had been sitting for most of the second half. There was no doubt about the outcome of the game. Then, it started. First, it was like a slight hum or buzz in the crowd, but it got louder and louder and louder, and you could not ignore it. The kids in the stands started chanting, "Critter, critter, critter." The players from the Shelter Island team looked confused. It got really loud, and before you know it, the whole crowd is chanting. Our coach did not respond. It was almost deafening at this point. "Critter, critter, critter." And they're banging on the stands. I looked up from the bench to the scoreboard. There was a little over a minute left in the game. The clock had been stopped because there was a foul. I got up from the bench and walked over to our coach. I said, "Coach, you hear them. We're up by a bunch. Can you let the critter in the game?" Coach said, "What if he gets hurt?" "Not a good idea." I said, "Coach, please. I will tell him not even to play defense. Just stand in the corner. Let me go on the court with him." Coach said, "Okay, Scotty, you have a deal." I walked over to the critter. I told him, take off your warm-up jacket. He could not believe it. I said, come on, man, let's go. We both walked on the court. I quickly told him where to go on the court. We took the ball out from under the basket. The crowd is in a frenzy now with the sight of the nasty critter on the court. The other guard passed the ball into me. I dribbled up the court. There was the critter in the corner like I had told him. I looked up quickly and saw there were about 40 seconds to go. I flipped the ball to him in the corner. It hit his hand. He stumbled a little bit, and the ball went off his hand and out of bounds. Shelter Island brought the ball up the court. We almost let them score because we knew if they did, we would get the ball back. They passed it from the top of the key to the foul line. One of their guards cut through the lane, and the other guard led him with a bounce pass. He cut right to the basket for a layup. I glanced at the clock. 22 seconds left. I got the ball passed into me from the inbounds pass. I dribbled up the court quickly. I got to near the foul line, and I remember thinking, plenty of time. Plenty of time. I looked up quickly at the clock. Out of the corner of my eye, I see 16 seconds. By this point, the crowd is going completely crazy. They're chanting, critter, 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 even louder than before. I spot the critter in the corner right where he's supposed to be. I whip the ball to the corner to the critter, who was wide open. He catches the ball and winds up with that crazy left-handed motion of his from his favorite spot, deep in the left corner. I had seen him make a million of these shots in his backyard. The critter lets go with a high-arcing rainmaker from way deep in the corner. Swish. Nothing but net. Even though there were probably still 8 or 10 seconds to go, it didn't matter. The stands emptied, and the whole school stormed the floor, chanting, critter, critter, critter. We all picked him up in the air and carried him off the court. I could still see his face in my mind, as if this happened yesterday. You never saw or will ever see so much joy and pride on someone's face. I felt that joy and pride for him. All I could think to myself was, yeah, nasty critter.